Hello and welcome everyone. It's Suzanne here from the Project Manager Clinic, and we've got another fantastic discussion today with expert Margaret Gilbert. And this is going to be a really fascinating one because it's about the chaotic project. And look, we've all been there or seen a chaotic project. Not all of us have had to manage a chaotic project. Some of us have to come in and do something about one, but they're out there. So just a reminder for anybody online, this is recorded. We'll go on the YouTube channel after the session in the next day or so. So please subscribe to the channel, give us a thumbs up if you're happy with the content, and we're going to be off. So Margaret, how are you today?
I'm doing really well. How are you, Suzanne?
I'm absolutely excellent. And this, like I said in the introduction, we've all seen these projects. Hopefully, you and I haven't created one of these projects, but we've all seen them, haven't we?
Yes, and some of the projects that I've done had failed once. I was brought in to get things back online, and that takes the chaos to a whole nother level. So the normal chaos that you have, from a project or a program of work,
Yeah.
and we can talk about what goes into that, but don't forget that it can get worse. It's when they call a halt and then they restart it again, or
Yeah.
a bunch of people finish up and they bring in new people, and it's like standing up all over again. It can just makes the chaos even worse because you don't have the institutional knowledge or the experience from last time, and you
Yeah.
don't know that you could be walking into the very same mess that they walked away from. So
Look, I
just to
think
keep it interesting.
that is really important, that institutional knowledge, and for those of us that have had to go and recover something,
Hmm.
the process to get that and to move it really fast is a whole other thing, which I'll probably do another session on. But navigating the chaos, right? The project manager's in a game. That's what we're going to talk about. Because I've sort of started to think as I've been doing these webinars, just how hard it is to be a project manager. It's actually not for the faint-hearted.
No.
Once you start to drill down on really making it work, it's more simple, I guess, at the layer where we're just applying our tools and things like that. When it gets nasty, it can get nasty. So one of the things we were going to talk about today is the mental fortitude required to steer projects through unforeseen turbulence. And that turbulence can come in all sorts of ways, can't it, Margaret?
And from all kinds of directions. And sometimes you see it coming and you know it's going to happen. And
Yeah.
other times it literally lands on your desk and you have no idea what got there or what's going on, or even what the turbulence is. Like, what is it disrupting? Sometimes you just don't know. You have to figure that out. And it
Yeah.
does take some resilience there and a bit of mental calm, that internal calm, because you can't get caught up in all of that, or you're not going to be able to do anything about it. If you're part of it, if you're in it,
Yeah.
it's harder to do something about it.
Yeah, look, absolutely. And I've done things where somebody's pulled the plug on a server, literally, and everything goes down. It shouldn't, but things happen, which you don't expect. But as project managers, we do have the tools and the techniques. This is a little bit more towards that inner resilience and a management style, I guess, to move through things. So we're going to hopefully talk a little bit about what the strategies are for maintaining composure, which you talked about, and making sound decisions amongst chaotic project environment when everybody's running around like nutcases. So the first thing off the rank, Margaret, is about the program charter. So tell us about that.
So one of the things I found, and again, I've been brought into programs that have been stopped or failed or put on hold and have to be started back up again. And if you don't have a clear picture of what was approved in the business case or from the board papers, what done looks like, what is the target we are trying to hit? When everybody on your team thinks it's something different, you're never gonna get there. And the team, I will include the steering committee and the members of the steering committee, the program owner, or the program sponsor, executives, chief stakeholders who may be in other parts of the business that, need this done. You have to have a clear picture of what done looks like and what's in scope, at which that means it's funded and delivered, and what's out of scope, which means it's not funded and it's not deliverable. And that sometimes is where people think that, but this would make it better, so therefore let's just put it into scope. And again, having the program charter that's been drafted based on the business case, talking to the key stakeholders, not all the stakeholders, let's be clear. This is not a democracy. We're not going to vote on what's in the program charter, but you have to have things that are concise and measurable. So if we're going to say this, we're going to deliver this capacity or this capability, you've got to be able to describe in numbers what it is. So when we get to the end, we're not going to have a discussion about was 5 enough or did it need to be 6? It's too late by then. You need that up front. And by having that drafted and reviewed by the key stakeholders, I then put it on the agenda for the steering committee and it gets minuted that it was approved. So this takes away some of the my experience takes away some of the wiggle room that steerco members or executives have, where they just figure, they'll just slide it in. Like, it's not that big a deal. Go ahead and add it in. It's like, no, I'm sorry. Anyway, we'll talk about that later. But by having it minuted and everybody on the team has access to it, and by team, again, I mean the steering committee, the executives, the vendors, the people involved in the team, the people you're handing over to BAU, the training team, the change team, the service desk, whoever else is involved, everybody's looking at the same thing. And then what I do, because I'm just slightly obsessive compulsive, when we have the RAID register, the risks, assumptions, issues, and decisions, I have an extra column in there that talks about whether or not it's part of the charter. And the default answer is it's not part of the charter. So if you have a risk or an issue that comes up, if we're going to do something about it, it's got to be in scope. And if it's not part of the charter or directly attributable to a deliverable of the charter, then it's out of scope, and if you want us to do that, someone's going to have to come up with the money and the resources and the time because it's out of scope. And again, by putting it into the RAID register, the program charter isn't something that can be ignored. It's discussed at every RAID review, every risk review, every issue review, every steerco. Anybody who accesses that pack on whatever SharePoint or Google Drive or wherever you've got it, it's always there. It's always in front of them. And again, the default answer is no, it's out of scope. So it's not for you to persuade me it's out of scope. It's up for you to persuade me it's in scope. And again, you have change control processes in place. And some of the chaos, to be fair, is caused because people, programs don't have change control processes in place. That again helps with that chaos because you can just slide things in, you dump it all into the risk register or the issues register, and then you just assume if it's in there, someone's going to do something about it, not you, somebody else. You need that change control process to say, yes, this is coming out of scope to put this in scope, or this is coming out of the budget, or we're going to do less of this so we can afford to do that. And all those things get approved at the steering committee level.
So there's a couple of things in what you've said that I've noticed. So increasingly I've noticed that minutes aren't done because it's all on Confluence or something, or in Monday, or it's somewhere, right? And you sort of alluded to this, that it'll go on an issues register and somebody will read it. No, it's up to us as the project manager to go there and say, these are the top 5 issues and risks, or whatever it is, and not let them slide. You also talked about maybe one of the senior stakeholders sliding something in. And that's also very interesting. I've seen that happen a lot for inexperienced project managers or people that have got a personality that they're a little bit more uncomfortable with. And I don't want to call it conflict. It's really standing up and saying, well, actually, no, that's not in scope. Hey, we can have it in scope, but this is what you're going to have to do. It's not like that we're being, just silly by saying no all the time. We're saying no for a purpose. So, and the RAID as well, it's so important. But like I said, it seems to be that's not happening. No wonder we're in chaos sometimes.
Yeah, and again, I think part of the reason is because people are so keen to get it done. And I think you and I had this conversation in the agile space. Everybody assumes you just have a daily stand up. You don't need planning, you don't need roadmaps, you don't need
Yeah.
product design, you don't need, minimum viable product is, whatever you can get done in 2 weeks. And I think that just becomes a bit of the excuse, because in the agile space, you actually have to plan more. You need more structure,
Yeah.
you need more rigor,
Yeah.
because you haven't got the time or the money or the resources to do things,
Mm.
in a relaxed, inefficient, take a long-term view kind of way. And I think sometimes agile becomes the excuse. And again, I've had people explain to me that in agile, we don't need risk registers and we don't need steer
Oh,
codes. And,
yeah.
we have stand-ups every day. And there's I actually had somebody tell me we did the planning like a year ago. And so we're good. We don't need to plan again because we planned a year ago. So we're just going to deliver whatever the product manager or the product owner wants. And every 2 weeks, we just get closer to whatever the new moving target is. And it's like, no, I'm sorry, that's not quite how it works.
No,
Um,
not how it works. Look,
so
I did a project a long time ago, and we used rapid unified process, right, which was that
mhm,
iterative stuff.
yep, yep.
Agile wasn't so big then, probably wasn't even invented. I don't remember. And if I get into a situation on a project where somebody is talking to me like that about agile, we don't work, I say to them now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to add an extra metric in my reporting, and it's going to be the number of iterations you have done to get to
Mhm,
this week. Okay? Because in Rapid, you know the number of iterations, and in fact, you're planning for the
mhm.
number of iterations. But in Agile, and I mean, I did computer science and run it, run it, run it, run it, run it.
Yep.
No, um, so once you start to lock them down a bit more like that, they start to think about it, I think.
And
Now, if
again,
I'm, yeah,
by keeping it in front of them, it's not something that you just mention once and then it's never brought up
oh,
again.
correct.
You
Yeah,
keep harping back on it and eventually
yeah,
it sticks, and
yeah,
that's what that will help with the chaos. But in the meantime, you've got to get those guardrails or those boundaries in place, and just keep on it, and in a positive and constructive way. I'm not saying you're dictatorial about it, or
yeah,
somebody mentions it, something changing, and you bang the table with your shoe saying, no, we're not going to do that. That's
yeah.
not what I'm talking about.
No, that's not what we're talking about. And we often talk about, agile and things like that because we're largely people I talk to are in information technology, which I've
Mhm.
been in as well for a long time. But I started in construction, and also in construction, these exact same things apply.
Yeah.
If you have poured concrete and it's not right, and then you've got to dig it up and pour it again, like why did it go wrong in the first place, and how am I knowing that it's not wrong this time? So what
Yep.
have you done? Where's the evidence? I'm always talking about the evidence, instead of people running around going, oh, it didn't work. Now I find this slide's really interesting. Never mistake motion for action.
So one of the things that I found is, and again, we'll pick on agile a bit, but it's true with every program I've ever worked on.
Yeah,
Everybody's running around, and they say they're not running around like a chick with their head cut off, but they are actually running around, and everybody's incredibly busy, and there's the energy
yeah,
in the room, and people are there early in the morning and they're there late at night, and you get midnight time-stamped emails, and all
yeah,
kinds of stuff. But there's a difference between motion and action. And just because everybody's really busy and pouring and are genuinely trying to do things, but they're not actually getting anything done, as a project or a program manager, that's what you need to look out for.
yeah,
Because if they're not actually delivering anything, I have to wonder what's actually happening. Is it that they're just working on busy stuff and they're not actually working on the right stuff, or are there obstacles in their way, or do they not have the skills, or they need direction? That's when you need to get the product owner, on site, or in the room. And motion is different than action. And so action is where everything you do, you're working just as hard, but everything you do is getting you closer to delivering something. And that delivery is part of what done looks like. And so if it's not just a matter of, oh, we missed a milestone, or we missed a deadline, or we missed a target. How close were we? And again, my
yeah,
experience has been in chaos. People just think, head down, bum up, just don't look up and just leave me alone and let me get my job done. Meanwhile, they're
Yeah.
working on something that isn't essential and could be done
Yes.
later, or doesn't have to be done to the nth degree. Close enough is good enough. And again, and I've worked on medical systems where close enough is good enough is not something you ever say out loud
Correct.
because it's
Yeah.
not. But I'm
No.
just saying you have to be clear on what you're doing and how it fits into done. And that gets back to the program charter. But if everybody's just busy and nothing is being delivered and nothing is being finished and nothing is being accomplished, as the program manager or the project manager, you have to ask the question, what's going on there? So this is a picture that shows you they're both pedaling like mad things. One
Mm.
guy's going to cross the finish line and he's going to win the Tour de France, and the other guy's not even going to get out of the car park but they're working just as hard. Like, it's not
Yeah.
lack of effort. It's not lack of expertise. It's not that they aren't trying or they don't have their hearts in it. It's just that, one is actually moving forward and the other one isn't.
But this is so classic of
Mhm.
chaos, isn't it? That people look like they're so busy, and often so important. I'm so busy. I'm
Yeah.
so busy, and I will often say to people, now, what is it that's making you busy? Well, they can't tell me.
No.
They often can't tell me. I had a project manager on one of my programs, and he proudly said to me, "Oh, I worked 72 hours last week." And I said, well, then we need to work out why that was, because like, if you've done it once, okay, but if there's a consistent overworking of yourself and the team, something else is wrong.
And if you're not doing something, if you're not delivering something, so we've all been on teams where you're doing the last round of functional testing or the data conversion
Yeah,
testing or the test run to the cutover to production. Yes, that will take a lot of time, and there will be, for a certain amount of time, everybody is going to be all hands on deck, whatever it takes to get the job done.
yeah,
Those are the exception, though. You shouldn't have been doing that for the previous 3 months. Um, and that's a sign that something is wrong. And again, that's the chaos. That's how
yeah,
you know the chaos becomes tangible. It's not just a, gee, everybody's really busy. Look at that. You sense the energy in the room. And I'm thinking that's exhaustion. That's frustration. That's
yeah,
fear. It's not positive, constructive energy that's delivering something. So sometimes you have to, again, make a distinction between motion and action. And if they're actually getting things done and they've got a deadline or a problem or a server went down or there was a cyber breach or whatever, all hands on deck and everybody does what they need to do. But if
yeah,
this is the life of the program and we're not anywhere near a major deliverable or, go live or, the end of hypercare, well, then why is everybody doing that? And what are they
yeah,
actually doing to
yeah.
spend all that time?
I'm going to ask you a little bit more about ways that we can identify the chaos, because you just talked a little bit then about people working long hours or hard, or when they're not near a deliverable. It's not always easy to identify the chaos, though, is it?
So sometimes this is where your schedule comes in really handy. And I know with Agile, it's every 2 weeks, but you still have what you're supposed to hit at the end of the every 2 week cycle. And that's where those are your checkpoints. That's how you know that you're actually doing something. If you're getting something done, if it's being
Yeah,
delivered. But if the schedule, and to be fair, I don't trust schedules. If it's more than a week between delivery, I don't trust that schedule because there's too much time to waste in there, or
yeah,
to go
oh
down the
yeah,
wrong track, or to
yeah,
deliver, to start working on something that's not relevant. So I prefer schedules that have clear milestones. And if something, you have to have the first draft of something and the second draft of something, and then it gets signed off.
yeah,
If they're more than a week apart, I'm sorry, that's too much time for the chaos, for people to get distracted or to lose interest or
yeah,
to get pulled off onto something else. You
yeah,
can't. You have to protect your resources so that they're not being given other things to do. But you also have to have clear targets of and clear expectations of what's expected when. And not everybody on the team is going to have something due on Tuesday,
mm,
but there will be times where that round of testing needs to be finished, or that round of bug fixes needs to be done, or that performance testing and adjustments to the network have to be finished. And keeping focused on those things, those clear deliverables, again, what does done look like?
Yeah.
helps people prioritize. Everything in your list to do can't be the same level of importance. There are some things that you've got to get done no matter what, and others which, yeah, you get them done. If they're a day or two late, that's fine, but you still have to get the other ones done. You can't take the relaxed attitude. So the schedule becomes a really important metric, guide as to
Yeah.
whether it's motion or action. The other thing I'll say too is keeping track of the time that people are working. I've worked in places where the CIO or somebody can tell how long you're logged in and how long you're actually working versus you're just logged in and, gone for a coffee and lunch and take the kids to
Oh,
school. And
okay.
we measure the effort, the activity, how much CPU are they burning? How much, what are they doing? Um, and that's another way to check that somebody's actually, getting things done, is because they're not just logged in and working 12-hour days. And if they are, you know about it in advance. So
Mm,
again, sometimes it's the resource utilization. Um, and they could be surfing the net and watching YouTube videos and, playing video games. So, I don't know what they're doing. I just know that they're active on the network.
yeah.
But that's a way sometimes to check. I've had people that I was worried about, and by finding out that they were logging in at 10 o'clock at night and working until midnight, I then know I need to have a chat with them. Now, it could be
Yeah.
that they're working with the team in India, and the team in India, finishes their work at 10 o'clock and then they hand it off. And that's why he's getting on it. The test team is doing that. So that's why he's getting on at 10 o'clock and working till midnight. But I
Yeah.
also don't expect to see him in the office at 8 o'clock in the morning. So again, you have the conversation, and sometimes asking the question, they're relieved that somebody has noticed that they're really struggling. They don't feel
Mm,
comfortable putting their hand up because they'll be seen to be lazy or a slacker or showing off, or I don't know what, people are complex creatures.
well, they
But
are.
asking
And
the question,
mm,
that sometimes gives them the opportunity to say, you know what, I'm really out of my depth. I'm in over my head, and I don't know what to do, and I could use some help. And that's fine. Like if you can do something about it.
yeah.
But if they never let you know, if they aren't comfortable putting their hand up, then how do you help them? How do you know they need help?
Yeah.
So, and they don't want to let down the
Yep.
team, and they don't want to look bad, and they don't want everybody to blame them because things are late. So they're killing themselves. And again, motion versus action. They're just not getting anything done.
We talked about this, you and I, a little while ago about the conflict on projects as well and how to deal with it.
Mhm.
But one thing that I've found in what you're saying is we used to call them heroes, hero project managers. I worked like this guy, 72 hours. I did. But now, why did you do all of that? Like I said before,
Yeah.
as the project manager, though, or the lead project manager or program manager, we have to stay very um, calm. I've written there, calm and clearly document the evidence,
Mhm.
but remaining rational and logic as well. So trying to dampen down the chaos is a difficult thing. And I've had experience, I wasn't managing this project, but the senior stakeholder kept coming in behind the project manager and tasking the agile team with stuff that he wanted done
Yep.
and completely bypassing the project manager. So that's chaotic. I mean, in that particular project, the scope had still not been nailed down 12 months later. So it's not good.
No. And again,
No.
those are the symptoms where you need to manage out. You need to
Yeah.
protect your team. And I actually have had teams where we had an agreement. If somebody gives you something else to do,
Yes.
you know, loop me into the email response where you say, yes, I can do that, but I can't get it done by tomorrow. I can get it done in 3 weeks,
Yeah.
so that I'm aware of it. But also let me know, because my job is to manage those. And my job is to hold the umbrella while the team digs the
Yeah.
ditch and keep the rain off of
Yep.
them. And that
Yep.
will help protect them from the chaos. But I've had executives, I've had program sponsors, I've had key stakeholders explain to me that it's not my job to manage the resources, it's their job. And it's like, I hate to break it to you, mate, but it's not quite
I
how it
know.
works.
That's, yeah.
And again, by having that program charter up front that everybody has access to, they can say, well, I'm happy to do that for you, Mr. CIO or CTO or CISO. show me where that fits in here. So,
Yeah.
or tell me what I can take out of scope, and then I'll send you a confirming email, and then they
Mm.
can manage that as well. But it sets that expectation that they are not just robots on the assembly line to do whatever's been given to them. There is
Yes.
a chain of command, and there's some visibility and transparency that needs to happen. And if the chief stakeholder or the CIO or the CTO or the CISO doesn't like it, they can talk to me. I'm more than happy to have that conversation.
Me too.
Let's
Me
book the
too. But
meeting
look,
and
I
let's
think,
have it. So, but you have to
I mean,
make
there's a lot of
let
projects.
the team know it's
Yeah.
okay. That they're not
Yes.
dobbing anybody, and they're actually protecting the integrity of the team and the deliverable by
Mm.
letting you know. They're doing you a
Yeah.
favor. They're doing everybody a favor.
That's
And
right. They're
that's,
doing
again,
everyone a favor.
and as
Yeah.
soon as somebody would say to someone on my team, well, don't tell Margaret, they're going to tell me. They can't tell me fast enough.
So we've sort of alluded to a couple of things there where we can start to see chaos is starting to
Yeah,
occur. People overworking, hero complex or sort of behaviour.
yeah,
Um, and there's sometimes a little bit of secrecy. People go quiet.
yeah.
Where some people just go completely quiet and let this other chaos happen around them. Senior stakeholders come and start tasking your people without letting you know.
Mhm.
Um, Vendors can also go completely off the rails. I've found, like they will have chaos in their own organisation, and how do we stop them from bringing that in though?
Again, I always want to make sure that there's the equivalent of a charter for the vendor, for each vendor.
Yes,
So it's clear. And this is where the RACI comes in, where
yes,
and I use a RACI with a C in there for consultation, so that
yeah,
the vendor you're expected to consult with the vendor. You don't do it in a vacuum. They may not be
exactly.
responsible or accountable or consulted or informed. They are in a support role, and so
Mm,
that's their job. And so by having the RACI, again, that calls out clearly what the vendor, and sometimes who at the vendor is responsible for it. So the
yes,
vendor can't do the magician, nothing to see over here, don't look behind the
and
curtain. and
yeah,
they, you don't know who's working on something. So again, the
yeah,
RACI also helps to not just manage stakeholders, but also to manage the vendor. The other thing that I found too is by having the equivalent of a program charter for a vendor, and it's linked back to delivery dates in the schedule.
yeah,
Sometimes their contract, those are the payment dates as well. So they don't get
yes,
paid until they deliver. And I try to stay out of the contract stuff, because if you're going to look at the contract, you're in trouble. You're doomed. It's not going to get fixed easily. But if I understand what the payment schedule is, and we link the payment schedule to their delivery to the program
yeah,
charter, to the overall program schedule, again, it takes away the wiggle room, and it holds the team accountable as well as the vendor. So the team can't let something slip and then blame the vendor, saying, well, you guys were supposed to have that done on Tuesday, you didn't get it done. When in actual fact, the team was supposed to get things to them and didn't. So again, it gives that
yeah,
transparency across the different artifacts of the program, but also, again, into steering committee meetings, into weekly or fortnightly status reports. It's, everybody's clear on what's expected, and what needs to be done when. And it all links back to the RAID register and the program charter.
yeah.
It makes it harder for people to disrupt and for the vendors to wiggle out of it.
Yeah, look, exactly. And before we started, you and I were talking a little bit about program design or project design.
Mm.
And this is the place where we start to establish, particularly with vendors, how you're going to interact with us and what do we expect. And I must say, I've been pretty tough on a lot of them and said, I'm not actually interested in your status report in that format. It needs to be able to fit
Mm.
into my format. And I had my own consulting company, so we had to do stuff
Yeah.
like that too. We expect to see these people perform in this way. We expect you to come to meetings. All of
Yeah.
those sorts of things, instead of then which is what another pointer to chaos is when people are saying, "Well, just get them in here, just get them in here," like all over, just get them in here. It's like bang, 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 bang. Well, no, I mean that should have been worked out to start with, but there's a point in time where the chaos has to stop. I've written here seek help, but I'm going
Mm.
to the next slide, Margaret, because at this point now we're in chaos. We as the project
Yes.
manager has to stop it. Now, how are we going to do it?
So my favorite thing is the professional no. And this is literally your best friend. So when you're told that you have to add something to scope, or the budget's been reduced, or the schedule's been moved up, you don't say no. You say, yes, we can do that, but this is what you need to do. You need to make these decisions. What do we take
Yeah,
out of scope to make it fit, if the, so that the schedule can still be met? Where are you going to find me the extra resources that I need to get that extra work done when you've moved the schedule up? There's less budget. So what are we taking out of, what are we not going to do so that we can, what's the important stuff to get done? And again, you go back to the program charter, and the RAID register, because if they're going to take things out of scope, they need to be clear on what, as a business, that they're going to
yeah,
wear. So you don't tell them no. And I can, from experience, I found that telling the CIO or the CTO or the CFO or the COO or some other CO person no is not very effective. You agree to do it, but these are the adjustments that we need to make.
yeah.
You need to make the decision. And then again, there's a confirming email that says, this is when we do it. I've also found that having these discussions in a steering committee meeting first up is not a good idea, nor is the kitchen or a hallway or outside the lift a good
True.
idea. I usually, with my key stakeholders, I have regular weekly meetings. So sometimes, it's with a group, two or three of them in a room. Sometimes
Mm,
it's with one-on-one. And that's where I used the professional no the first time. And I just explained, yeah, we can do that. That's possible, but this is what you need to do to make that happen. Or
yeah.
you need to sign off on this, or this is the impact. You have those conversations offline and not in front of everybody else. So then when you do
Very,
have it
yeah,
in the steering
important.
committee meeting, they can do all the
Yep.
bluster and all the bravado and all the macho power
Yeah.
crap that
Yeah.
needs to happen. And then
Mm,
they, they publicly agree to what they've already agreed to behind the scenes. But the way you position it is you don't say no, and God forbid you just say yes and then try to figure it out on your own, because that's not your
no.
job. If
Yes.
these are decisions that need to be made, they impact the business. And again, I've worked in medical for companies. This affects the patient's life, could affect the patient's life if it's an emergency
Yeah.
department technology that you're using, but also staff who are customer facing. This is going to have an effect on them. The business needs to make this call. It's not the program. And so
Yes.
that's again the reason, the way you say no, the professional way to say no is to say yes, but this is what it's going to cost you, or this is what the trade-off is. And those decisions need to be made by somebody else. And my job is to make sure those decisions get made, and they're informed decisions. And I have had sponsors just tell me that my job is to get it done. It's like, yes, it is, but not this time, because I'm not doing, that's not, that's not how it works.
Yeah.
And again, it's challenging and it's difficult, but there are ways to have these conversations. And I've worked, I've worked with people who I just tell them and they just take it. They're brutal, direct,
Yeah.
neurodiverse people. They don't like the subtleties and nuances. So just be direct with them. Others,
Mm,
you kind of need to take them down a path a bit so that they're comfortable with the idea that they can make they can make those decisions, and know which battles to fight and which ones they'll find the money from somewhere. Just go ahead and do it.
yeah.
Um, you have to do it for the target audience. So it's not one size fits all.
True.
I did work with a guy who said that just because I said things with an American accent and confidence, he knew I was lying to him. He just couldn't quite prove it. And I said, well, fair enough, because sometimes he was right. I was lying to him, but he couldn't prove it. So, we just had to find a way to work through it. But again, you have to target the professional no is not just something where you just say no. You say yes,
That's right.
but something else, but it has to be targeted to the audience. And it's not the
Yeah.
first time you give them the bad news is not in the steering committee meeting. The first time you give them the
Yeah.
bad news is in the one-to-one meeting, or the small subcommittee meeting, where you meet with two or three key stakeholders,
Yeah.
every Monday afternoon at 3 o'clock. And that's when you have the conversation. So that the first time they're hearing about it is not when they, 10 minutes before the meeting, they look at the agenda and think, wait, what is that? Nobody told me about that. So that's where
Yes.
managing it that way, again, helps with, to be fair, in the meeting, they're all macho and bravado, and they're, posturing, and, it's not their
Yeah.
fault, and they'll find out and all this. And then they disagree because they just have to get it. They have to say it in front of each other,
Yeah.
get it out of their system, and then we move on. But you have to do it behind the scenes, offline first, and individually, so that they can get it out of their system, and then, do the research or check or find the money or whatever they need to do to make sure that it can be handled. And then we get the decision, it's minuted, and then we move on.
We often get told that project management is tactical, but it's actually quite strategic. And that's the example in what you're talking about, excuse me, where we're doing things before we get to the steering committee. We're talking to people. We're laying the groundwork. There's nothing worse than going in, as you say, and dropping a bomb on everybody in the steering committee and trying to get a response, because all they can think about is the bomb.
Yep.
So they
Yep.
haven't moved forward. One of my suggestions is, from what you were saying too, for people watching this, is don't necessarily have to rely on your personality. If people are watching you and I, Margaret, they'll go, well, they're pretty tough. Well, yes, we are, but fall back on your project management tool set, which is what Margaret was saying. Go back to the charter. These are the things that you've got in black and white, and say, look, this is what we've got. This is what we're working to. Do you want to change that, or are you still happy to do it? Still happy to do it? Say nothing, wait for an answer. Great. Can you give me that in writing? Actually, I'll send you an email quickly.
I'll send you a confirming email to
Just a
summarize what
real
we've
quick
agreed
one.
to.
Yes,
Yep.
exactly. And I always put on the bottom of mine, if you disagree with anything in this email, please respond. Otherwise, I take it to be correct, because I've
Yep.
done a lot of work in contracts, right? So don't come back at me, because there's likely to have an issue later. So there's just a couple of things there that we've talked about that can help people get through. Now, this is just me reinforcing basically what Margaret said. These are my 3 rules of project management, which I developed when I did a very big program in Thailand way back centuries ago. And it was for a bank. And, they weren't very used to projects of that degree. So my first rule is don't panic. And that's typical of this chaos. Okay, let's not panic. Let's first find out where the chaos is coming from. And in this example, this is where the person actually pulled the plug out of the server. Bank. Okay, that wasn't good. Rule number 2 is say no with purpose. So it's similar to what you're saying, Margaret. It's not just a no. It could be, when I say it, sometimes I'll say, well, actually, no, we're not going to be doing that. But this is what we're going to be doing, and then walk them through. I've got this much money left in the budget. How do you want to change it? Things like that. And rule number 3 is have fun, because if we're not having fun, or if we as the project manager or the leader aren't calm and don't appear to be in some sort of control, and we're all depressed and unhappy, and we've got a scattergun approach, it's not going to work with the team. So be happy. What is it going to take? Do we get on a meeting? Do we go to lunch? Do we have coffee? What do we do?
I've got a bit more of a strategic view on that too, Suzanne, because I worked on a program where it was for one of the big banks, and we had people on the team from the bank, but also from Telstra and IBM, and an equipment company, and then the odd contractor and stuff. And so the team had very little in common. So having fun, it was hard for them to find ways to gel together because they were all working on different aspects of it. So what we did is we organized, the FIFA World Cup was coming up, and nothing like sport to get people from 12 different countries all on 2 different pages or 3 different pages.
Yeah.
And we did the same thing when the T20 or maybe it's the One Day World Cup was happening in Melbourne in the cricket. But we've had informal groups where, you put $1 in, and you've got tickets in the pool, and you had teams you were supporting. And when your team fell out of the 16 and it went down to 8 and then down to 4, the team actually had things that they could talk about other than work, and how the
Yeah.
game went that night and those kinds of things. And it was a really good way to build a bit of a personal relationship about something that was much more important than the program we were working on for the bank, which was the FIFA
Exactly.
World Cup or the Cricket World Cup. And I got to the point where it was the Cricket World Cup that was in Melbourne. I want to say I don't think it was the T20. I want to say it was one day internationals, but anyway, and it was Australia, New Zealand, India, and somebody else, say South Africa. And the deal was whoever won didn't have to come to work the next day. I would sign their timesheet. They could have the day off because their country had won.
Yeah.
And I'll be damned if they all showed up to work the next day. Every single one of them, because,
Yeah.
but it, it was sport, and it was something neutral that everybody could get, even if you didn't care about sport. We all care about the
Yeah.
FIFA World Cup or a Cricket World Cup.
Yeah.
And it was a way that they could connect, and it built a lot of resilience in the team, so that the
Yeah.
having fun had nothing to do with work. And they critique each other's country that they were, whoever you were backing, they'd make fun of the players or the coaches or whatever,
Yeah.
that they cheated
Yeah.
or whatever, the usual sporting stuff that people say. And it just gave them a way to let off some steam, but to also build relationships, no matter who you worked for, whether you were with the bank or IBM or Telstra or the vendor, the software company or the equipment company. It didn't matter,
Yeah.
because they had something else and it was a bit more laughter and a bit more fun in the office between them, as opposed to only talking about work. Or and it didn't take a lot of time, it didn't take a lot of energy, but it did give a lot of benefit.
And look, I think that's a really good example, because I don't know about now so much, but certainly in the past, in my earlier project career, we
Mhm.
used to have a lot more fun. The teams really bonded
Yep.
a lot more, I thought. We didn't do remote working. So I'm not saying that remote working is a bad thing, because I love it, because I don't like going into the office. But we have to employ different ways of working and bonding and building the team as a project
Mm.
manager than just all being, in the office and doing what we used to do, which on one project, we all went out and had lunch, and we used to call it gloop. We went and bought this stuff in Brisbane, and it was literally gloop. And that's what we do, right? So it bonded us. But we can't do that all the time now. And Margaret,
Mm.
were there other slides, or this was it? I
No, I think
think
that was
this is
it.
it now.
Yep.
Excellent. So just a reminder for people to subscribe to the channel if they wouldn't mind. That would be great. Give us a thumbs up from below if you've liked what we're doing, because we like what we're doing. We have a great time doing all of this. I'm just going to ask the two people that are online currently if they have anything, and I can see that Kathy is typing. So um, if there's a question, that would be fantastic. Otherwise, we'll start to wrap up shortly. Is there something that you want to really reinforce, Margaret, that we've talked through today?
I think the calm that you have as a leader, as a program manager or a project manager, that calm, you need to protect that. And when somebody
Yeah,
brings you bad news, or they have a problem, or everybody else is in a panic, sometimes you being calm, you don't care whose fault it is, just how are we going to fix it, and being very pragmatic like that can have a real calming effect. People um, feel like they're off the hook. Like, they're not going to be taken out back and beaten because, they made a mistake, that
yeah.
that they're still valued, and that the point is to get it fixed and to move on, and not attribute blame, or, try to find somebody just to throw under the bus. So that's the one thing. Your calm sometimes sets the precedent, so other people on the team will
True.
be calm as well.
Yeah, that's really, really true, because it sort of goes back to what we were talking about at the start. It's the inner game for the project
Mhm.
manager. That's the calmness of the staying steady. And I always talk to people about it almost being, you're steering the ship and keeping
Yeah.
it steady. Um, oh, we're just getting some feedback from people now. That's really fantastic. So, saying not yet, not no, but if so, yes, then these are consequences. how do you want to continue? Yes, this
Yep.
is the feedback that we're getting. Thank you for those people that have joined us. And remember, if you're out there and your project is in chaos and you're a project manager or you're a sponsor or a senior stakeholder, let us know at the Project Manager Clinic and by going to the website, which is www.pmclinic.com.au. And we have just now introduced the coaching program. So 10 sessions, and you'll get a very experienced coach like myself or Margaret or somebody else in my network who will actually help you with some practical steps to get through the issues that you're having on your project. So again, thanks so much, Margaret. It's been fantastic.
No worries. Thanks, Suzanne.
And thanks for everybody that attended, and have a great project day.